Hey folks, I want to continue to work through Galatians with you. I want to move into chapter 4. There's a couple verses that I want to look at. Verses 8 and 9. Paul writes, "Formerly, when you did not know God, you were enslaved to those that by nature are not gods. But now that you've come to know God, or rather to be known by God, how can you turn your back again to the weak and worthless elementary principles of the world whose slaves you want to be once more?" So Paul is reminding us that we have forsaken the world where we once were slaves to sin. We have been set free, and we are now slaves to Christ, slaves to righteousness. But of course, we find ourselves often um, called back to the ways of the world. And those temptations are there, they're real. We battle the flesh, but we must remember who we belong to. Paul said in Romans chapter 6, verse 16, he says, "Do you not know that if you present yourselves to anyone as obedient slaves, you are slaves to the one whom you obey, either of sin, which leads to death, or obedience, which leads to righteousness?" So we are slaves to the one that we obey. Are we obeying our selfish desires, or are we obeying God's word? Are we following the Spirit, or are we following self? Jesus said in Matthew that you cannot serve two masters. Either you will hate one and love the other. You cannot serve both God and money. You could say the same thing. You cannot serve both God and self. To be a Christian is to deny self. And we must completely and wholly, with all of our heart, follow God and obey his commandments.